Today we're diving into the late medieval era to uncover the beer that hobbits might have poured at the Green Dragon. Hey, I'm Harrison, I'm a certified sommelier, token nerd, and your Mid-Earth Somm. So grab a tankard, string a lute, and get ready to enter your wench era. We're drinking ale like hobbits. So let's go by the standard assumption that Lord of the Rings takes place in the vague late medieval ages. We're talking 1350 to 1450, we're talking 100 Years' War, we're talking Robin Hood, we're talking motherfucking trebuchets! During this time, beer was hyper-localized and almost exclusively brewed by women as part of the day's chores. And by the way, there are quite a few creators, like Dr. Chelsea Potts, who have gone in-depth on how the modern iconography of witches largely comes from brewing, which you should definitely go check out. So yeah, Rosie was definitely brewing beer at the Green Dragon, which adds a very specific dimension to Sam's infatuation with her. And honestly, fair. Remember that in the books, the last person Samwise says goodbye to before leaving Bag End is the beer in the casks in the cellar. "Coming, sir," came the answer from far within, followed soon by Sam himself wiping his mouth. He had been saying farewell to the beer barrel in the cellar. Now, there's no way to definitively know what a historically accurate medieval ale would have tasted like, as brewing was considered such a common task it was hardly worthy of notation in the written record. What we do know is that we would have seen a high variance from house to house, tavern to tavern, and region to region. Beer would have been made by either boiling the malted barley in a kettle over the fire, or in a technique that I just think is so hobbity, putting the malted grains and water into an open cask, then heating rocks in a hot fire until they're hot enough to start the liquid boiling, and then throwing them in. After that sweet barley tea, what brewers call wort, spelled like wart, but pronounced like yurt, because as the professor dedicated his life to proving, the English language hates us. Wort was successfully made in either kettle or cask. Groot, that disgusting blend of herbs used to add flavor and act as a preservative, would have been added and infused. From there, that wort would be poured into another container and either inoculated with house yeasts or allowed to spontaneously ferment with wild yeasts present in the local environment. However, even if they were using house yeasts preserved from previous fermentations, because of the lack of a controlled, sterile setting, the beer would come into contact with wild yeasts no matter what. Them hobbits was filthy. The chief among these, Brettanomyces, would impart flavors ranging from clove to barnyard, depending on how long the hobbits decided to let the beer ferment and condition. If the beer was allowed to condition, that is, set aside in a separate container, in this case most likely an oak cask, and allowed to continue slowly moving through the stages of fermentation, differing yeast strains would contribute until all the sugar in the wort is converted to alcohol. Remember, that's what yeast does, after all. It converts sugar to alcohol and other compounds that add flavor to the beer. So, what would our historically accurate beer taste like? Well, overall, it would most likely be a slightly sweeter style, due to the absence of hops to add bitterness, as well as residual sugar left over from shorter fermentations. Because of those shorter fermentations, we also wouldn't have anywhere near the level of alcohol we see in modern beers starting in the industrial age. Think less double IPA and more watered-down session ale. It would be darker in color, with more roasted flavors. As before 1640, kilning, that is, roasting the malted barley, wasn't an exact process, so paler malts were almost non-existent. Additionally, if they were boiling the wort in a kettle, that would caramelize the liquid and darken the beer. We know it would take on a slight sour quality from wild yeasts, regardless of how careful the hobbits were to shut them out. There would be an herbaceous quality to it from the Groot, that blend of herbs no one uses anymore. In the Shire, by the way, those would most likely include mugwort, mentha, so think spearmint or peppermint, gillyflower, and angelica, according to Walter and Graham Judd's Flora of Middle-earth. Now, even if the hobbits were using local hops, and the Judds seem to think so, although their primary evidence seems to be that because beer exists in Middle-earth, hops must as well, which, as we've been covering, might not necessarily have been the case. The bottom line is that that beer wouldn't taste anywhere near as crisp and balanced as even the mildest of pales that you can enjoy today. Now, if they're not using hops, this beer would have a super short shelf life and wouldn't have anywhere near the amount of carbonation as the drink we think of today when we think of beer. Basically, think of a slightly effervescent hot toddy, or like if you just threw some grain alcohol into a sweet rooibos tea. You are allowed to pity our ancestors. That's called progress. When and why did we stop using gruit and start using hops for beer production? Basically, people were using hops as far back as we can tell on the written record in the 800s. And there are a couple instances in the historical record in the 1200s, but it wasn't really until the 1400s that it took off because of the Bavarian purity laws of 1496, I believe. Could be wrong on that date. Basically, gruit was the exclusive property of churches for the longest time. So you'd have to go get your gruit from monks in the area. After the Bavarian purity laws that restricted the use of gruit and stipulated that the only ingredients you could use would be water, yeast, hops, and malted barley. Well, not just malted barley, but just malt in general. You could include wheat and other grains. Then everything started switching over, and that style just kind of took over. Just because hops are so much better at preserving beer, that especially factors in as we entered the Imperial Age, where brewers were starting to export their beers to the Baltics from England or all the way to India, where you needed that hop character to survive the journey in barrel. But also just like hops just tasted better. So there's a lot of reasons.
So a lot of it also comes down to we had to start shipping beer for the first time.
A couple centuries later, yeah, the main reason, at least like anecdotally, I mean, there's myriad reasons I'm sure that deep dive historians on the subject matter would talk about. The most cited reason is because the purity laws basically said that we're going to stop using gruit. But I imagine it also just tasted better once people started brewing with hops and figuring out how to use that. Now, this style is sort of impossible to try outside of brewing it yourself, but if you want to experience something close-ish to it, all you have to do is fly to Belgium and check out Gruit Brewery in Ghent. You could also try this series of beers and producers I'm afraid to pronounce. Lammen Sutty, Williams Brothers Frosch, Heather Ale from Scotland, or, oh boy, Jopen Kweiti beer from the Netherlands. It's from the Netherlands, so I get a pass. But again, this isn't the medieval ages, and Tolkien wasn't interested in reproducing the accurate progression of technology from the real world. I mean, that would make hobbits either Edwardian time travelers or a secret race of technological advanced elders. You know, actually, we should probably cover that in another video. So keep following along for what I think is a more probable answer for what ale the hobbits were drinking in the Shire. Hi, thank you so much for watching. Please like and subscribe if you enjoyed the deep dives that we're doing here. We're still a new channel, so thank you for checking us out and supporting us.